Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Jeff Osborne, the Sustainable Energy and Mobile Tech Analyst over at Cowen. Thanks for joining us. Very pleased to have Paul Rivera, CEO of Electromechanica, joining us. Paul, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me. I'm really glad to be able to tell our story.
Well, excellent. Maybe I see you've got some slides there of the Solo. Why don't, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with Electromechanica and the Solo vehicle, do you mind taking a few minutes to introduce what it is you folks are up to and what the mission of the company is?
Yeah, just a couple of slides just to kind of tell the story a little bit here, right? The first thing to tell everybody, Jeff, is that we're not a Me Too electric vehicle company, right? We're a Canadian designer and manufacturer of electric vehicles. And the vehicles that you see here on the right-hand side of the screen are very different than any electric vehicles that you may have come across so far in the space, right? This is our flagship vehicle that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. It's a one-person, single-occupant electric vehicle. It's single seat, right? This is our Solo, right? And if you think about everything that you do solo, right, that you do when you're by yourself, whether it's commuting or whether it's going to get a cup of coffee or whether it's when you go to the gym or anything that you do solo, that's what this is all about. And right now our geographical footprints are, we were started in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're headquartered there in British Columbia, and we have our R&D and engineering facility there. And then we initially started our retail locations and our distribution and service out of Los Angeles, California. And then we have a contract manufacturing agreement with a group called Zhongshan Industries, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the discussion here. But this is what our company is about. And the last thing I want to say before we get deeper into the discussion is we're really trying to go for redefining and carving out a whole new space. And that space sits beautifully between micromobility and passenger vehicle. If you think about it, Jeff, what you have on the one end of the spectrum is passenger vehicles. And passenger vehicles are always sized with a powertrain that is for the maximum number of passengers and the maximum payload that you're carrying. And most of the time, it's underutilized. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have micromobility, and that's all the little electric bikes and the little scooters that you see driving around in the right-hand lane now. And it's users are mostly exposed to the elements. There's lack of safety and protection features. But our vehicle is purpose-built solution for the modern urban challenges that are out there. And we're creating a new ecosystem. It's all about driving solo, a vehicle that goes 100 miles in range, 80 mile per hour top speed that's highway safe. That's what this is. And I just wanted to share a few slides first, just so that we could set the tone for the rest of the discussion.
No, that's very helpful. First of all, I think launching a vehicle, I think you go in production here shortly, or delivery shortly. Remind us on the timeline.
Yeah, so actually we started production. So we started production on August 26th, and it's been a journey to get there, right? So the company was founded in 2015. And a lot of engineering and a lot of learnings along the way, as you can imagine. So we went through first evolution of the vehicle, which was hand-built vehicles, basically engineered in Canada, built in Canada, hand-built. We built 64 prototypes that were put on the road first in the hands of early adopters up in British Columbia. And a lot of learnings from those vehicles. And some of those vehicles were actually on the road for more than 30,000 kilometers. Then we signed an agreement with a contract manufacturer in China in 2017 called Zhongshan Industries. And that agreement enabled us really to go to the next level. They became a strategic partner. They put money into the company as well. They were an investor in the company, and we were able to leverage their experience, which we can talk about in a little bit. But then from there, we were able to put the vehicle into production. We took some space in their facility, manufacturing expertise, and got an assembly line from them. And after a lot of engineering, we were able to launch production in the summer of this year.
Got it. And then what does it take, 45 days to get across the ocean and deliveries before year end, or
Normally, yes, but obviously this is a COVID world, right? So I'm not quite sure what the logistics will all be right now. So we'll have to see kind of how that all plays out. But we're expecting and anticipating that the first vehicles will be here sometime around the middle of the November time period, and hopefully we'll be putting the keys into the hands of people who've been waiting anxiously on our waiting list sometime around Thanksgiving.
Speaking of COVID, how has that impacted marketing of the vehicle itself? I think you're at a few malls in California and Arizona, if my memory is right. But what are you seeing in terms of interest and the ability to market a vehicle in a socially distant world?
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting because obviously the vehicle was never created. The vehicle was created well before COVID, right? It was created in 2015. And you're right that when we think about the retail footprint, there was some slowing down on the retail side. We started out with Westfield, and we started in Century City, and we opened up the retail first footprint. Retail was in Century City Mall, and we did that in Thanksgiving of last year in 2019. And then we started to expand. And then, of course, because of COVID, things kind of slowed down a little bit, right? But here's what did happen. What happened was, because of COVID, people started to get really, really concerned about mass transit. And they started to get concerned about taking public transportation and Uber and Lyft. And so all of a sudden, there was a great interest in our vehicle. And people started to reach out to us, and they started to say, when is that vehicle going to become available? Because here you have this perfect single occupant vehicle in a self-contained environment that now, as we emerge from the pandemic, you control that vehicle. You're in your own environment, and the only germs in that vehicle are your germs. And so it's the perfect vehicle as we emerge from the pandemic for people who are concerned about mass transit and taking Uber and Lyft and things like that. So there was two effects. One was the slowing down on the retail side and the ability for us to expand. And on the other side, we had all this demand that was kind of increasing at the same time because people wanted another option.
Got it. And then are you seeing any commercial folks that are interested, or is it all just consumers? Like, I'm thinking like restaurant delivery. Is there an application there that you need to focus on at all?
Yeah. And this, when you ask me that, this is the exciting part for us. The vehicle was originally created for the consumer and for the 76% of the stuff you do alone, right? As we talked about driving solo, right? But what's happened is that we've realized that there's a much larger ecosystem here, and there's really three parts to the ecosystem. So one is the retail side. But if you get a chance, or if the viewers get a chance to look at our investor presentation, there's really three parts to the ecosystem. And in the commercial space, if you look in the back of our deck, there's a picture where you can see the amount of space that's in the back of the vehicle, where there's groceries, and you could carry groceries, you could carry carry-on and luggage and things like that. And there's a hatchback. And in a couple of weeks, we will be introducing to the world the utility version of the Solo. And basically, you remove the hatchback of the vehicle, and there's a cargo/utility box that you would be putting, a stylish utility box that you would be putting on to the vehicle. And that enables everything from pizza delivery to post and small parcels. And even these security vehicles that go around parking lots at night, or neighborhoods, and monitor, neighborhood watch and things like that. There are so many delivery and commercial applications, Jeff, where there's a single occupant in a vehicle. And this vehicle is perfect for that because it's electric. It goes 100 miles in range, charges in less than 4 hours. And the insurance rates are very low on it. And the total cost of ownership, which is really important to fleets, is the lowest total cost of ownership than any other vehicle out there. And then the last part of the ecosystem, which is really, really cool, is the ability to share the vehicle, right? And I know that when people think of rideshare, most of the time they're thinking about Uber or they're thinking about Lyft. But if you can picture walking up with your mobile phone and these vehicles all sitting on pods somewhere, and you can walk up in Santa Monica and use your phone and unlock the vehicle from an infrastructure and take it off of a pod and get into the vehicle and then drive that vehicle from Santa Monica into Beverly Hills or to Los Angeles, or from Midtown Manhattan down to downtown. That's what we're creating. It's an ecosystem. The vehicle is the link in that ecosystem. And so for us, we're really excited because our value proposition is so completely different than any other EV company out there.
That's helpful. Maybe you mentioned the Chinese partner, Zhongshan, if I'm pronouncing it right, but can you just talk about the manufacturing ramp over the past couple of weeks, and then what's needed to get them geared up? I assume this has been something that they've been planning for quite some time, but maybe any variables you can share, like what kind of capacity they have would be helpful as well.
Yeah, so their annual capacity is 20,000 vehicles for us. Just for those who don't know, Zhongshan is one of the largest motorcycle companies in the world. They make up to 3 million motorcycles a year, based out of Chongqing, China. They have more than 50 joint ventures around the world with the likes of Piaggio and Vespa, very, very well-known brands. They have 400 acres under roof as a manufacturer. The reason why we partnered with them is obviously to leverage their manufacturing expertise, their supply chain expertise, instead of us having to figure out how to go do all this by ourselves and start from scratch. It's better to have somebody who already had all those learnings. They've been around since 1982, so this was a very well-known company. And we intend to continue to build on that relationship. The goal right now is to continue to build on that relationship. And as far as the ramp-up goes, though, methodical and strategic, to answer your question. And the reason is because first, we have to get the engineering right, and we had to get the engineering right. And that's what we've spent the last X many years doing, and especially the last 13 months since I became CEO, making sure we get that right. Now we want to make sure that we take our time on the ramp up and on making sure that we've got everything right on the assembly line and on the supply chain side of things. And then it's all about the customer experience side, the customer care, the drive solo experience, how we roll out in California, Arizona, and Portland, Oregon. So that's all very important. We can't get it wrong. We can't get a black eye. It's got to be right. So it's important, Jeff, that we get it right.
There's a lot of questions that have come in from investors on the dashboard here that I'm looking at, about the ramp up. And is it the genesis of their questions is around either, deposits that folks have or intended production this year or next year. Is the rationale for not giving some of those metrics because of what you just described? Is this methodical approach, or is there any metrics that you've shared in the past as it relates to indications of interest, either from consumers or commercial entities that you mentioned earlier around restaurant and post and delivery?
No, and I know it drives people nuts because I don't like to give the metrics, but here's why I don't. I don't because we've said since Val Bueller, my CFO, came in to the organization before me and then me after her, we've said that the reality is we were going to start on the West Coast. We were going to be a direct to consumer model. We're going to have a different retail footprint than large brick and mortar stores with long-term leases. If you look at our retail footprint, it's very different. It's 200 to 400 square foot. It's more like a pop-up retail location in the flow of traffic in a mall, right? And the reason why we're reluctant to talk about, what's the orders look like and what's the expressions of interest look like is because when we start to look at what the global interest is and what's the interest in other parts of the United States where we're not launching yet, it becomes difficult for us to even think about places where we're not going to put the vehicles right out of the gate when we're really focused on just California, Oregon, Arizona, and just the left coast, so to speak, right? And so we're just so careful. We want to make sure that we're so focused on the West Coast and on a methodical and strategic ramp up. And that's why we're so careful not to talk about, well, what's our global interest or what's our U.S. interest, and just focus on this part of the U.S. and the regional side. And that's really the reason.
And that regional approach, is it, so sales is one thing, but service is another. And so is that the issue? Is that, someone in Texas couldn't order a vehicle and get this delivered?
No, anybody can go online and they can place an order that's a $250 completely refundable deposit, right? But the reality is that our service center is in Los Angeles right now. We will have regional service centers. We have been negotiating third-party service agreements with third-party service suppliers as well, and we'll also offer mobile service, right? But like I said, in this world, you get one chance to launch a vehicle company.
Right.
You cannot have a black eye, right? So we just want to be careful how we scale. And that is the real reason why we're being so strategic and so methodical. For me, it's all about credibility. It's all about making sure that we execute to the plan and we deliver against that plan.
That makes sense. Can you just talk about the U.S. production, plans to bring that domestically? I guess, how does that decision-making process go? What are the one or two key variables? There's a lot of tax rebates that states are throwing around. Is that the process you're in now of where you get the best deal, or is it a labor issue? Or
absolutely. If you're talking about our efforts with BDO to look for an assembly operation here in the United States, there's lots of reasons for it. The biggest reason, though, is that this is the biggest EV market in the world, right? And of course, the world's a big place, and we have a great relationship with Zhongshan. And the way we view it is Zhongshan can be the supplier for the global market, of course, right? And what we've said to them is it makes sense for us to have an assembly facility in the United States that helps with, first of all, supplying the U.S. market. Second, mitigates against the volatility between the U.S. and China on the political side and with the tariffs. Third, allows us to tap into the U.S. talent base. Fourth, allows us to go after a global supply chain. And, from a logistics standpoint, it makes a lot of sense too. So the goal here, just so everybody's clear who's listening to me, is that we would bring kits, knockdown kits in from China, tap into the global supply chain on the most expensive components, right? And that's how we would reduce or potentially mitigate and eliminate all of the tariffs, and then build in the U.S. for the U.S. Market, and then build an engineering center as well in the United States. So that's really what the plan is. And then Zhongshan could supply rest of the world. That's really kind of what the goal is.
And are those the kits that they would be delivered? Is that part of the 20,000 unit capacity, or is that 20,000 units of final assembly?
20,000, technically they could do 20,000 final assembly, but there's sufficient space in their operation right now. There's enough parallel space in their operation that we could add to the capacity. So They have 20,000 units of capability as of today, but there's enough space also to add to the capacity.
Is that like a long lead time item, just out of curiosity? I mean, does 20,000 get you like 3 years of business without having to worry about that? And then after that, either they have to expand or you have to find an additional partner? What are the mechanics of convincing them?
Very quickly. We could ramp up very quickly with them because it's an asset-light model. Most of the suppliers are supplying parts right to the production line, and it's more an assembly. It's a light assembly operation than anything else. This is not a
welding, painting,
CapEx.
Okay, got it. And then maybe just coming back to the retailing strategy. Can you talk about how the rollout's going, what locations you have now, when you might be beyond California, Arizona, and the left coast in general, as you put it? Is there sort of a 3-year roadmap that you've shared of like, when will I see a Solo in Chicago or New York City?
Sure. So of course, LA for the obvious reasons, right? See and be seen there, and early adopter mentality there. 4.6 million commuters. There's lots of reasons for Los Angeles, right? And so we did start with Westfield. We have a great relationship with them, and we started in Century City, and we're doing Sherman Oaks. Now it's under contract, and we actually just installed the pop-up location there. We're in Scottsdale, in the Phoenix area with Macerich, and in Portland, Oregon already. We've just agreed to multiple other locations through the rest of this year and into H1 of next year. So that's all on the West Coast and down into the Texas area as well. So that's what we're excited about. And really, and we've hired a new director of sales, Lynn Yeager, who's helping us grow in that strategy as well. And it's all about building awareness, or as she calls it, brand activation experience, right? So this is really exciting for us. And then the idea would be that over the next 12 months to, of course, proliferate throughout the southern states and up the East Coast as well. So I hope that kind of answers the question, but we just want to be careful on how we proliferate.
I assume it's fairly CapEx light to get a 200 square foot location in a retailer. You just
very light.
Throw a vehicle, desk in there.
Incomparable vehicle, incomparable manufacturing strategy, incomparable launch and marketing strategy as well.
Right. Okay. And then the delivery process, an investor asked about, is it like sort of Carvana style where you deliver it to the home, or does somebody pick it up at the mall? How does that work?
It's more like Carvana, more that way. So it's direct to consumer. You place your order online, and you can basically expect to have it delivered to your home. Or if you live in the Los Angeles area and you still feel the strong desire to go and pick it up, you'd be able to pick it up from the LA distribution center.
Got it. And then I'm curious on the direct consumer marketing being essential, part of the story. Can you talk about, what specifically this person, I forget the woman's name, I think you just mentioned, I apologize, around sales, but what are you doing to build brand awareness? B, any kind of feedback on demographics? What's the prototypical solo customer that's putting a deposit down?
Yeah, so we're working hard on a digital media campaign, a social media campaign. It's interesting because it's a combination of both digital and innovative new stuff, and then also influencer campaigns as well. But then there's also paid traditional too, right? And I get asked why the paid traditional stuff as well. And we're lucky because we're riding the economic tailwinds of EV awareness. People know about EVs today, right? But they don't know about the solo. So on the traditional side, for example, in Los Angeles, we're strategically putting up billboards in certain areas. So if you come off the 405 freeway, for example, onto Santa Monica Boulevard, we have strategically placed billboards that say, are you driving solo? Well, then drive solo. Like we're posing the question. We're making people think about the fact, are you sitting there by yourself in that vehicle? Then think about it. Now, to answer your other question about the typical kind of buyer for the vehicle or consumer that buys the vehicle, it goes across the board. We have, first of all, a lot of our early studies are the people that are interested in iPhones or Galaxies or early technology adopters are the kinds of people that like our vehicles, right? We also have a very strong minimalist movement that are interested in our vehicles as well, people who are shedding, so they like our vehicles as well. But then we've had, interestingly enough, because I've worked in the retail locations myself, we've had the parents who've come in. I've had a parent who's come in, a couple, and they wanted to buy one for their 18-year-old son, and they were interested in it because they did not like the idea of having 3 or 4 other teenagers in the car with their son texting and distracting their teenage son at 18 years old. And they thought that this was the perfect vehicle for their son to have independence, to go to and from community college, to go visit his friends, and to be able to go around close by and not worry about whether he had other friends in the vehicle who were distracting. So lots of really, really good, a plethora of good consumers all over the board with different reasons, but are all eco-friendly and all interested in making a statement to drive a very different, modern, sleek, trendy, eco-friendly vehicle.
Hey, just out of curiosity, a lot of EV buyers have multiple cars. Are you seeing, the classic 45-year-old soccer mom wanting this for the daytime to go shopping or to the grocery store, but then might have the SUV or the gas guzzler?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had one great example. We had one woman who lived in West Hollywood, who worked in Culver City, who came in, and she had 2 children and dressed to the nines and was not worried about, it wasn't a financial thing, but what she was looking for an EV, and she was looking to make a statement that she was conscious of the environment and she wanted to be eco-friendly. And she was talking about the fact that it was different looking and that it was cool. And she used the exact words, "I want to drive this and I want to be the envy of my girlfriends. This gets me from where I need to go at home to my office and back. And this is perfect for what I need."
Okay. We've only got about 5 minutes left. There is about 30 different ways of asking what your deposit number is, but you've already opined on that one. So I'll let you get off the hook on that. But certainly the California market, being such a huge driver of EVs is probably a wise place to start. Maybe a 2-part question in the 5 minutes we have left is, one, can you talk about the non-consumer market and, how you're going to get like a Pizza Hut or a Domino's or someone like that to come on board? Is that something you personally spend your time doing, or do you have sort of middlemen as a distribution partner to go after people like that and bring awareness? That's part one of the question. And part two is, when you think about what your company will look like in 5 years, is there any opportunity to expand the product portfolio, into other form factors, a 2-seater, or whatever you think is next? But anything you can share on those 2 vectors would be helpful.
Yeah. So on the first one, no middleman. We have hired a fleet, and we've hired somebody who's spending their time devoted to work the fleet sales side of the business for us. But I do spend a lot of my time working in that as well. I enjoy the relationship. I enjoy telling the story, and I feel like it's very important for us to go and build those relationships, and it's very important for me to explain the value proposition personally. So I spend a lot of time there, and we're in discussions with a number of fleets. First of all, especially in the food franchises, they don't want to give up profits to the third party anymore, right? There's a lot of profits that are being given away to third parties. And secondly, especially again, I hate to bring up the pandemic, but as we emerge from the pandemic, and they've gone through great lengths to keep that food in a sterile environment, in a clean environment, and then they give the food to an individual who may have a baby seat in the back with crushed up goldfish, and it's like they've gone through all this effort. And here the Solo provides an economical, eco-friendly, electric way of delivering the food, and it's just a really unique vehicle. So it's just a great vehicle for that. So I spend the time doing it.
And what do you think around the optionality into other form factors is the last question. We've got 2 minutes left.
So to answer that question, so as we evolve the vehicle, people have asked us if we could look at providing a tandem seat. Will we have a longer wheelbase? Could we provide a tandem seat so that possibly, flip up tandem seats so somebody could take, another individual on short haul, short jaunts and things like that, short journeys. So we are looking at all of those things, especially as we evolve into the European and the Southeast Asia market, which is 18 months to 2 years away.
Got it. Maybe just to conclude, what would it take for you to give metrics, 6-9 months from now, when you're delivering on a routine basis, you feel comfortable with the facility in China? Is that something, as a publicly traded company, I guess, what would be the driver of getting you and Bao over that hump of sharing, what the, of how the business is going? A lot of pre-revenue companies have this exact challenge, but I'm curious, how given it's in sniffing distance of all this, good events playing out, what it would take you to give those kinds of metrics.
Well, I think we're there, right? I think that when we get into next year, we will start giving metrics because we've crossed over the hump, right? I think the big thing is we've gone from being pre-revenue to now we're in production and we're going to go into being revenue. So I think that we're at that point where we will start giving metrics, right? But I think that for us right now, it's all about building credibility. It's about building the brand, putting a population of the vehicles on the road, getting the next generation of the Solo into works, and a few more surprises. So all I can say is follow us. The journey's just beginning, and drive Solo.
All right, there you go. Thanks, Paul, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Okay,
so enlightening as always.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.